Welcome back to Rory Reads. My name is Rory, and today we're continuing with Chapter 1 of the Sherlock Holmes series by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah. Last time we left off with the mysterious masked man, and we're going to find out who that is today. Before we jump in, if you like this content, subscribe, or if you want me to read something else, go ahead and comment and spread the word. I'm really just trying to figure out what works for you guys, but hey, anything for story time for adults. Enough blathering, let's dive right in. Grab a mug, warm coffee, tea, or whatever beverage of choice, and settle in. Here we go. Pray take a seat, said Holmes. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson, who is occasionally good enough to help me in my cases. Whom have I honor to address? You may address me as the Count von Kram, a Bohemian nobleman. I understand that this gentleman, your friend, is a man of honor and discretion, whom I may trust with a matter of the most extreme importance. If not, I should much prefer to communicate with you alone. I rose to go, but Holmes caught me by the wrist and pushed me back into my chair. It is both or none, said he. You may say before this gentleman anything which you may say to me. The Count shrugged his broad shoulders. Then I must begin, said he, by binding you both to absolute secrecy for 2 years. At the end of that time, the matter will be of no importance. At present, it is not too much to say that it is of such weight it may have an influence upon European history. I promise, said Holmes. And I. You will excuse this mask, continued our strange visitor. The august person who employs me wishes his agent to be unknown to you, and I may confess at once that the title by which I have just called myself is not exactly my own. I was aware of it, said Holmes dryly. The circumstances are of great delicacy, and every precaution has to be taken to quench what might grow to be an immense scandal and seriously compromise one of the reigning families of Europe. To speak plainly, the matter implicates the great house of Ormstein, hereditary kings of Bohemia. Who is this guy? I was also aware of that, murmured Holmes, settling himself down in his armchair and closing his eyes. Our visitor glanced with some apparent surprise at the languid, lounging figure of the man who had been no doubt depicted to him as the most incisive reasoner and most energetic agent in Europe. Holmes slowly reopened his eyes and looked impatiently at his gigantic client. If your majesty would condescend to state your case, he remarked, I should be better able to advise you. The man sprang from his chair and paced up and down the room in uncontrollable agitation. Then with a gesture of desperation, he tore the mask from his face and hurled it upon the ground. You are right, he cried. I am the king. Why should I attempt to conceal it? Why indeed, murmured Holmes. Your Majesty had not spoken before I was aware that I was addressing Wilhelm Gottfried Sigismund von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Cassel-Felstein, and hereditary king of Bohemia. God, I can't read. But you can understand, said our strange visitor, sitting down once more and passing his hand over his high white forehead. You can understand that I am not accustomed to doing such business in my own person. Yet the matter was so delicate that I could not confide it to an agent without putting myself in his power. I have come incognito from Prague for the purpose of consulting you. Then pray consult, said Holmes, shutting his eyes once more. The facts are briefly these. Some 5 years ago, during a lengthy visit to Warsaw, I made the acquaintance of the well-known adventurers, Irene Adler. The name is no doubt familiar to you. Kindly look her up in my index, Doctor, murmured Holmes without opening his eyes. For many years, he had adopted a system of docketing all paragraphs concerning men and things, so that it was difficult to name a subject or a person on which he could not at once furnish information. In this case, I found her biography sandwiched in between that of a Hebrew rabbi and that of a staff commander who had written a monograph upon the deep-sea fishes. Let me see, said Holmes. Born in New Jersey in the year 1858. Contralto, La Scala, Prima Donna Imperial Opera of Warsaw, yes. Retired from operatic stage, Living in London, quite so. Your Majesty, as I understand, became entangled with this young person, who wrote her some compromising letters and is now desirous of getting those letters back. Precisely so. But how? Was there a secret marriage? None. No legal papers or certificates? None. Then I fail to follow your Majesty. If this young person should produce her letters for blackmailing or other purposes, how is she to prove her authenticity? There is the writing. Pooh-pooh, forgery. My private notepaper, stolen. My own seal, imitated. My photograph, bought. We were both in the photograph. Oh dear, that is very bad. Your Majesty has indeed committed an indiscretion. I was mad, insane. You have compromised yourself seriously. I was only crown prince then. I was young, but I am 30 now. It must be recovered. We have tried and failed. Your Majesty must pay. It must be bought. She will not sell. Stolen then. 5 attempts have been made. Twice burglars in my pay ransacked her house. Once we diverted her luggage when she traveled. Twice she has been waylaid. There has been no result. This guy, he's like paying people to like break into this poor woman's house. Anyway, no sign of it. Absolutely none. Holmes laughed. It is quite a pretty little problem, said he. Damn right. But a very serious one to me, returned the king reproachfully. Very indeed. And what does she propose to do with that photograph? To ruin me. But how? I am about to be married. So I have heard. To Clotilde Lothman von Saxe-Meningen, second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. Excuse my French. You may know the strict principles of her family. She is herself the very soul of delicacy. A shadow of doubt as to my conduct would bring the matter to an end. And Irene Adler threatens to send them the photograph. And she will do it. I know that she will do it. You do not know her, but she has a soul of steel. Excuse me. She has the face of the most beautiful of women, and the mind of the most resolute of men. Rather than I should marry another woman, there are no lengths to which she would not go. None. You are sure that she has not sent it yet? I am sure. And why? Because she has said that she would send it on the day when the betrothal was publicly proclaimed. That will be next Monday. Oh then, we have 3 days yet, said Holmes with a yawn. That is very fortunate, as I have 1 or 2 matters of importance to look into just at present. Your Majesty will, of course, stay in London for the present? Certainly. You will find me at the Langham under the name of Count von Krumm. Then I shall drop you a line to let you know how we progress. Pray do so. I shall be all anxiety. Then, as to money, you have carte blanche. Absolutely. I tell you that I will give you one of the provinces of my kingdom to have that photograph. And for present expenses? The king took a heavy chamois leather bag from under his cloak and laid it on the table. There are 300 pounds in gold and 700 in notes, he said. Holmes scribbled a receipt upon a sheet of his notebook and handed it to him. And Mademoiselle's address is Briony Lodge, Serpentine Avenue, St. John's Wood. Holmes took a note of it. One other question, said he. Was the photograph a cabinet? It was. Then good night, Your Majesty, and I trust that we shall soon have some good news for you. And good night, Watson, he added, as the wheels of the royal brougham rolled down the street. If you will be good enough to call tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, I should like to have this little matter over with you. At 3 o'clock precisely, I was at Baker Street, but Holmes had not yet returned. The landlady informed me that he had left the house shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat down beside the fire, however, with the intention of awaiting him, however long he might be. I was already deeply interested in his inquiry, for though it was surrounded by none of the grim and strange features which were associated with the 2 crimes which I have already recorded, still, the nature of the case and the exalted station of his client gave it a character of its own. I wonder if Watson is talking about the 2 cases that come before these books, with The Study in Scarlet and I think Hound of the Baskervilles. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. If you guys know what the other 2 cases he's referring to, leave it in the comments. But in any case, there's 2 books that come before this main one. Indeed, apart from the nature of the investigation which my friend had on hand, there was something in his masterly grasp of the situation and his keen, incisive reasoning which made it a pleasure to me to study his system of work, and to follow the quick, subtle methods by which he disentangled the most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed was I to his invariable success, that the very possibility of his failing had ceased to enter into my head. It was close upon 4 before the door opened, and a drunken-looking groom, ill-kempt and side-whiskered, with an inflamed face and disreputable clothes, walked into the room. Accustomed as I was to my friend's amazing powers in the use of disguises, I had to look 3 times before I was certain that it was indeed he. With a nod, he vanished into the bedroom, where he emerged in 5 minutes, tweed-suited and respectable as of old, Putting his hands in his pockets, he stretched out his legs in front of the fire and laughed heartily for some minutes. "Well, really," he cried, and then he choked and laughed again until he was obliged to lie back, limp and helpless, in the chair. "What is it? It's quite too funny. I am sure you could never guess how I employed my morning, or what I ended up doing. I can't imagine. I suppose that you have been watching The Habits, and perhaps The House of Miss Irene Adler." "Quite so, but the sequel was rather unusual. I will tell you, however, I left the house a little after 8 o'clock this morning in the character of a groom out of work. There is a wonderful sympathy and freemasonry among horsey men. Be one of them, and you will know all that there is to know. I soon found Briony Lodge. It is a bijou villa, with a garden at the back, but built out in the front right up the road, 2 stories, chub-lock to the door. Large sitting room on the right side, well furnished, with long windows almost to the floor, and those preposterous English window fasteners which a child could open. Behind there was nothing remarkable, save that the passage window could be reached from the very top of the coach-house. I walked round it and examined closely from every point of view, but without noting anything else of interest. I then lounged down the street and found, as I expected, that there was a mews in a lane which runs down by one wall of the garden. I lent the ostlers a hand in rubbing down their horses, and received in exchange 2 pence, a glass of half and half, 2 fills of shag tobacco, and as much information as I could desire about Miss Adler, to say nothing of half a dozen other people in the neighborhood, in whom I was not the least interested, but whose biographies I was compelled to listen to. "And what of Irene Adler?" I asked. "Oh, she has turned out all the men's heads down in that part. She's the daintiest thing under a bonnet on this planet. So say the Serpentine Muse to a man. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, drives out 5 every day, and returns at 7 sharp for dinner. Seldom goes out at other times except when she sings. Has only 1 male visitor, but a good deal of him. He is dark, handsome, and dashing. Never calls less than once a day, and often twice. He is a Mr. Godfrey Norton of the Inner Temple." See the advantages of a cabman as a confidant. They had driven him home a dozen times from Serpentine Mews, and knew all about him. When I had listened to all they had to tell, I began to walk up and down near Briony Lodge once more, and to think over my plan of campaign. This Godfrey Norton was evidently an important factor in the matter. He was a lawyer. That sounded ominous. What was the relationship between them, and what was the object of his repeated visits? Was she his client, his friend, or his mistress? If the former, she had probably transferred the photograph to his keeping. If the latter, it was less likely. On the issue of this question depended whether I should continue my work at Briony Lodge, or turn my attention to the gentleman's chambers in the temple. It was the delicate point, and it widened the field of my inquiry. I fear that I bore you with these details, but I have to let you see my little difficulties if you are to understand the situation. "I am following you closely," I answered. I was still balancing the matter in my mind when a hansom cab drove up to Briony Lodge, and the gentleman sprang out. He was a remarkably handsome man, dark, aquiline, and mustached, evidently the man of whom I had heard. He appeared to be in great hurry, shouted to the cabman to wait, and brushed past the maid, who opened the door with the air of a man who was thoroughly at home. He was in the house about half an hour, and I could catch glimpses of him in the windows of the sitting-room, pacing up and down, talking excitedly, and waving his arms. Of her I could see nothing. Presently he emerged, looking even more flurried than before. As he stepped up to the cab, he pulled a gold watch from his pocket and looked at it earnestly. "Drive like the devil," he shouted, "first to Gross and Hankey's in Regent Street, and then to the Church of St. Monica in the Edgware Road. Half a guinea if you do it in 20 minutes. Like a past a Uber driver. Away they went, and I was just wondering whether I should not do well to follow them when up the lane came a neat little landau, the coachman with his coat only half buttoned, and his tie under his ear, while all the tags of his harness were sticking out of his buckles. It hadn't pulled up before she had shot out the hall door and into it. I only caught a glimpse of her at the moment, but she was a lovely woman with a face that a man might die for. "The Church of St. Monica, John," she cried, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. This was quite too good to lose, Watson. I was just balancing whether I should run for it, or whether I should perch behind her landau when a cab came through the street. The driver looked twice at such a shabby fare, but I jumped in before he could object. "The Church of St. Monica," said I, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. It was 25 minutes to 12, and of course it was clear enough it was in the wind. My cabby drove fast. I don't think I ever drove faster, but the others were there before us. The cab and the landau, with their streaming horses, were in the front of the door when I arrived. I paid the man and hurried into the church. There was not a soul there save the 2 whom I had followed and a surpliced clergyman. I think he's saying he's fat. who seemed to be expostulating with them. They were standing, all three standing in a knot in front of the altar. I lounged up the side aisle like any other idler who had dropped into a church, and suddenly, to my surprise, the three at the altar faced round to me, and Godfrey Norton came running as hard as he could towards me. "Thank God!" he cried. "You'll do. Come, come." "What then?" I asked. "Come, man, come. Only 3 minutes, or it won't be legal." I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I was, I found myself mumbling responses which were whispered in my ear, and vouching for things of which I knew nothing, and generally assisting in the secure tying up of Irene Adler, spinster, to Godfrey Norton, bachelor. It was all done in an instant, and there was the gentleman thanking me on one side and the lady on the other, while the clergyman beamed on me in front. It was the most preposterous position in which I ever found in my life, and it was the thought of it that had started me laughing just now. It seemed that there had been some informality about their license, and the clergyman absolutely refused to marry them without a witness of some sort, and that my lucky appearance saved the bridegroom from having to sally out into the streets in search of a best man. The bride gave me a sovereign, and I mean to wear it on my watch chain in memory of the occasion. "This is a very unexpected turn of affairs," said I. "And what then?" Well, I found my plans very seriously menaced. It looked as if the pair might take an immediate departure, and so necessitate the very prompt and energetic measures on my part. At the church door, however, they separated, he driving back to the temple, and she to her own house. "I shall drive out in the park at 5, as usual," she said as she left him. I heard no more. They drove away in different directions, and I went off to make my own arrangements. "Which are?" "Some cold beef and a glass of beer," he answered, ringing the bell. "I don't have beer, but I have coffee. I've been too busy to think of food, and I'm likely to be busier still this evening. By the way, Doctor, I shall want your cooperation." "I shall be delighted. You don't mind breaking the law?" "Not in the least. Nor running a chance of arrest?" "Not in a good cause." "Oh, the cause is excellent. Then I am your man. I was sure I might rely on you. But what is your wish?" Naughty Watson. "When Mrs. Turner has brought in the tray, I will make it clear to you. Now," he said as he turned hungrily on the simple fare that our landlady had provided, "I must discuss it while I eat, for I have not much time. It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours we must be on the scene of action. Miss Irene, or Madame, rather, returns from her drive at 7. We must be at Briony Lodge to meet her. And what then? You must leave that to me. I have already arranged what is to occur. There is only one point on which I must insist. You must not interfere, come what may. You understand? I am to be neutral, to do nothing whatever. There will probably be some small unpleasantness. Do not join in it. It will end in my being conveyed into the house. 4 or 5 minutes afterwards the sitting-room window will open. You are to station yourself close to that open window. Yes. You are to watch me, for I will be visible to you. Yes. And when I raise my hand, so you will throw into the room what I give you to throw, and it will, at the entire same time, raise the cry of fire. You quite follow me? Entirely. It is nothing very formidable, he said, taking a long cigar-shaped roll from his pocket. It is an ordinary plumber's smoke rocket, fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting. Your task is confined to that. When you raise your cry of fire, it will be taken up by quite a number of people. You may then walk to the end of the street, and I will rejoin you in 10 minutes. I hope that I have made myself clear. I am to remain neutral, to get near the window, to watch you, and at the signal throw in this object, then to raise the cry of fire, and to wait you at the corner of the street. Precisely. Then you may entirely rely on me. That is excellent, I think, perhaps. It is almost time that I prepare for the new role I have to play. He disappeared into his bedroom, and then returned in a few minutes in the character of an amiable and simple-minded nonconformist clergyman. His broad black hat, his baggy trousers, his white tie, his sympathetic smile, and general look of peering and benevolent curiosity were such as Mr. John Hare alone could have equaled. It was not merely that Holmes changed his costume. His expression, his manner, his very soul seemed to vary with every fresh part that he assumed. The stage lost a fine actor, even as science lost an acute reasoner, when he became a specialist in crime. And that's all we have time for today. Next time on Sherlock Holmes, don't forget to subscribe, like if you like this content, and comment on what you think will happen next. And let me know if you guys want me to read anything specific. I'm open to ideas right now, or even if you just enjoy the content, just let me know. Every little like or comment really helps. All right, see you next time.